Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Peacock Ocean Wing Tourbillon. This watch is available from peacockwatches.com for $2,519, which is €2,339. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in a solid wooden watch box, which is housed inside this outer cardboard box. On the front of the lid we have the Peacock emblem, Peacock logo and 1957. Peacock have a rich brand heritage. They were founded in 1957 in China, and they are well respected for making high quality movements, including tourbillon movements such as the Peacock caliber SL5811 tourbillon used in this piece. So one removes the lid to the outer box, which is a snug fit. Pulls down the flap, and inside there's a foam protective panel which does a good job of protecting the solid wooden watch box in shipping from any damage. So I'll take it out and show it to you. So solid wooden watch box, glossy lacquered finish to it. It's finished to perfection. Nice dark green, aesthetically pleasing tone to it. Stainless steel hinges, and I like that the lid is inlaid with a aluminium plate which is brush satin finished and printed with high definition printing of the movement used in this piece, the Peacock caliber SL5811 tourbillon. So good presentation, an example to other mid-tier Chinese brands of how to get presentation correct. The hinge lid is spring loaded, and the interior is fully upholstered to a high standard with contrasting green velour fabric. In the underside of the hinge lid we have the Peacock emblem, Peacock logo and 1957. In the base there's a removable panel, so there are two tags, one on the left and the right hand side, so you can get good purchase with your index fingers and thumbs to withdraw it. And in the centre there's a cutout, as you can see, and that houses the padded pillow cushion which the watch fits onto. So good snug fit in the base, and it prevents the watch sliding around in shipping and getting damaged. Now in the base there's a second cutout, and that houses a velour fabric envelope, as you can see, with a stainless steel popper. Good attention to detail because it's also embossed with a Peacock emblem, Peacock logo and 1957. Good quality stitching around the perimeter in contrasting black. So inside it houses two items which I'll show you. Plastic warranty card. Now, I'm pleased to report that this Ocean Wing Tourbillon is covered with a 2-year international warranty. Often mid-tier Chinese brands only cover their watches with a 12-month international warranty, so to get 2 years of warranty is very good. On the reverse, there's space to fill in the name of official retailer, model number and date of purchase, and we've also got the website peacockwatch.com. So 2 years of cover is very good. And lastly, one also gets this owner's instruction manual, clear concise diagrams. The instructions are in English and it's also translated into a plethora of foreign languages. The clear concise diagrams are high definition and easy to follow, and it details the operation of the movement used, which is the Peacock caliber SL5811 tourbillon. So good presentation. I like the watch box, and immediately one gets the impression that this Ocean Wing tourbillon is a high quality piece with a high quality tourbillon movement. So with regards to the specifications of the piece, we have a 44.5mm case diameter, we have a lug to lug measurement of 50.2mm, a thickness of 11.3mm and a lug width of 22mm. The FKM fluoro rubber strap tapers from 22mm at the lugs down to 20mm at the buckle and tang. Now, the buckle and tang is solid stainless steel, as one would expect, but it's not made from 316L grade, as you would expect. The head of the piece, the bezel, the case, and also the case back, and even this buckle and tang are entirely made from 904L stainless steel. So this is very unusual in the mid-tier at the €2,339 price point. Rolex use 904L and they call it oyster steel, and those pieces are €10,000 plus. So it's very unusual to see 904L grade stainless steel used in the mid-tier at $2,339. Peacock deserve full credit for this. So buckle and tang is 904L. Engraved with high definition engraving of the Peacock emblem. Nice angular profile to it, doesn't have any sharp edges or sharp corners. Flawless brush satin finishing to the top side, underside and flanks, correctly proportioned. Nice heavy gauge to the 904L stainless steel, and it's going to be robust and reliable, and also like the angular profiles to it. Beautiful luster to the brush satin finishing, it's very well finished. The FKM fluoro rubber strap is very high quality, and it also has vents in it to allow for sweat and perspiration and also seawater to wick away from the strap and dry out quickly. We have a flat sapphire crystal with clear AR coating on the underside, and the clear anti-reflective coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the silver mirror polished applied indices and silver mirror polished skeletonized sword handset. Now I want to give due credit to Peacock here because again, often Chinese mid-tier brands use the cost-cutting measure of only using 1 or 2 layers of AR coating on the underside of sapphire crystals. Peacock do not cut any corners with regards to anti-reflective coating. This ocean ring has 5 layers of anti-reflective coating on the underside, and you can clearly see the benefits of the 5 layers of AR because it does reduce the glare and the reflective nature to a very good standard. 5 layers is optimum. It is the industry standard for good reason. So proportions of the skeletonized sword handset are correct. One can clearly differentiate between the larger, longer minute hand, which has more C3 superluminova in field, and the shorter, wider hour hand. So the hands are the correct size. Often mid-tier Chinese brands have a tendency to undersize the handsets. They're too short, but you can see these hands look correct for the size of the dial. Also, the indices are correctly proportioned for the dial. The dial has a beautiful blue tone to it, so it's graduated. It's an electric blue in the centre, and it graduates to a dark navy blue at the chapter ring. Quality of the printing to the white minute ticks and the Arabic numerals on the chapter ring are high definition and crisp. The font isn't too thick and blurry on the Arabic numerals, and the white minute ticks on the chapter ring are sharp and crisp. So at the 6 o'clock position we have the Tourbillon, which is a free sprung tourbillon. The benefit of it being a free sprung tourbillon is it is more shock resistant, and as you can see around the circumference of the tourbillon we have a 60-second scale, so it acts like a subdial for 60 seconds. The tourbillon has a silver pointer to it, and you can see the pointer registers on the black second ticks on the silver ring around it, and it acts like a second hand because the tourbillon rotates at 1 rotation every 60 seconds or 1 rotation every minute, and you effectively use the pointer on the tourbillon as the second hand for the watch. So good proportion to the tourbillon. One can clearly read the seconds, and the only negative to this Peacock Caliber SL5811 tourbillon, I want you to be aware of it does not hack, so it's impossible to set the time precisely to the second because you cannot stop the tourbillon dead, and I'll demonstrate that in the time setting test. But the dial is very well executed. I like the Peacock text logo. It's high definition, 1957, and below it we simply have 300 meters / 1000 feet. Often mid-tier Chinese brands have a tendency to over-brand the dial with unnecessary text or specification. The dials are too cluttered, too busy, rather than being minimalist and clean. But Peacock have got the balance just correct because we simply have the Peacock logo, 1957, and the water resistance rating. Just the right amount of information, 3 lines of text on the dial. It looks balanced with the tourbillon at 6 o'clock, and I think it's very aesthetically pleasing with the graduated dial. With regards to the bezel, it's solid 904L stainless steel, as is the case in the case back. Brushed satin finish to it, and its gear tooth profile. They've made the correct decision here rather than using a scalloped bezel or alternatively coin edge bezel, which are the 2 industry standards. The gear tooth bezel looks aggressive, it gives it a tall watch aesthetic, and it does suit the design of this piece with the angular lugs. Now, one of my favourite aspects to this piece is the domed sapphire crystal bezel insert, which is fully lumed with C3 superluminova. It reminds me of the Blancpain 50 Fathoms sapphire bezel insert because it does have that similar domed profile to it, and it's very aesthetically pleasing. It's got a nice glossy finish to the sapphire, and of course sapphire crystal is hard and scratch resistant like ceramic, and it's also very aesthetically pleasing because it is glossy. But I like the domed profile to it. Rather than just being flat or beveled, it has that curved domed profile which catches the light, so it's a very good looking bezel as per the Blancpain 50 Fathoms. Also like the large triangle rather than having a Lume pip at 12 o'clock and the 15-minute ticks. The font is sharp and crisp for the 15, 30 and 45 Arabic numerals. The legibility is good and it just looks very aesthetically pleasing. The case is made from solid 904L stainless steel, as I've detailed, and 904L is used by Rolex, and I think Peacock deserve credit because they could have used the less expensive option of 316L grade stainless steel. As per most Chinese low tier and mid tier brands, 904L is more expensive. In terms of colour tone, there's no discernible difference in the silver or grey tone of 904L. It looks exactly the same as 316L grade stainless steel, and in terms of hardness, they both have similar hardness ratings. So there's no benefit in terms of hardness or in terms of the aesthetics. They both look very similar, but 904L is very beautiful, as you can see. Beautiful luster to the flanks, which are longitudinal brushed satin finished. Nice angular lugs, nice crisp edges. Doesn't have any sharp corners or tips to the tips of the lugs, and also the undercuts to the flanks are deburred and chamfered very well. Nice detail, because on the top edge of the case we have this large mirror polish chamfer, and that is mirror polished to perfection. Even in between the lugs, just below the bezel, you can see the large chamfer all the way around the case. So they've done a very good job of finishing it, and also the tops of the crown guards are mirror polished to the same standard. Angular profile to the crown guards, they're correctly proportioned, and they do a good job of protecting the partially recessed knurled crown. So the crown is solid 904L stainless steel, knurled finish, nice large chamfer to it to delete the sharp tips of the knurled teeth, and you can see it's got a matte blasted background to it and a mirror polished Peacock emblem. So very nice to see a signed crown. Let's test the screw down crown execution. So screw down crown provides an effective hermetic seal to 300 meters, which is strong specification. Silky smooth, this is sublime screw down crown execution. Perfect interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. The threads feel very smooth, they interface very well, and minimal friction to it, minimal number of turns required to fully unscrew it. So when it's unscrewed, we're now in the manual wind position, because this tourbillon is a manual wind, it doesn't have a rotor, and one can manually wind it to its maximum 48-hour power reserve, which is very good specification. Now, it does feel firm. When you manually wind it, you can feel the friction of the gearing, meshing. It feels robust and reliable, but you can feel the mainspring is heavily sprung loaded. It does feel more heavy than the mainspring used in other automatic pieces. So to put this into perspective, the mainspring on this tourbillon movement feels heavier than on a Sellita SW200-1, which you will all be familiar with. So you can feel the tension building up. Now, how many turns does it need? That's the important thing. 48 hours is a relatively long power reserve. Often automatics will have a 40-hour power reserve. So 48 hours is strong power reserve, but the mainspring therefore has more tension in it and it is heavier, and it still only takes 40 full clockwise turns. When the movement is fully exhausted, the mainspring is fully unwound and the movement stops dead. It takes 40 full clockwise turns to fully wind it to its maximum 48 hours. Now, that's something to bear in mind if you prefer automatic movements, because you can't just wear this piece for 8 to 12 hours per day as per an automatic to keep it charged up. You need to manually wind this piece every 48 hours. So in practice, every 2 days, you need to give it 40 full turns clockwise, and that will fully wind it, and then it will run for another 48 hours or 2 days. So that's something to bear in mind, because it's manual wind, not automatic. Feels good to manually wind, feels smooth, but it does feel heavy, and of course it is laborious, because when you rotate the crown 40 times clockwise, you can feel the tension building up, but you have to give it a good turn with lots of torsion in order to wind it fully. So putting it out to the first click position is the time setting position. Now, I want to bring this to your attention. The one negative of the Peacock Caliber SL5811 tourbillon is that the movement does not hack. If you look at the tourbillon, it rotates at 1 revolution every minute or every 60 seconds, and the pointer on the tourbillon registers on the 60-second scale on the silver ring around it. And it's very good, it's very accurate, but it does not hack, so it's not possible to set the time precisely to the second. Normally when you pull out a crown on an automatic, for example, it stops the movement dead, it hacks the movement, and you can set the second hand precisely to the second. With this tourbillon, you cannot do that. It continues to run, even in the time setting position, non-stop. That's something to bear in mind. If you prefer to set watches precisely to the second, you cannot do that with the Caliber SL5811 tourbillon. That's the only negative. But light resistance to the gearing, minimal friction, the gears mesh very well, so high quality tolerances. Feels very smooth, clockwise and anti-clockwise when you cycle through the 12 hours. Very light resistance to the gearing, feels low friction, and it has 24 joules, but you really cannot feel any friction in the movement whatsoever. In terms of how it feels lighter than a Sellita SW200-1. You don't have the friction of the gearing, you can feel the teeth of the gears mesh very well, feels nice and tight. but there's minimal backplay in it. When you rotate the knurled crown clockwise and anti-clockwise, there is some very slight backplay, so you have to take up some slack, but when you become accustomed to that, it's not detrimental. Actually feels very good, feels nice and tight, minimal backplay. Pushing it back in's got a nice positive click. So let's test screwing the crown back down. Instant thread pickup. There's a perfect interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. Quality control, tolerances and build quality of the machining to the threads, both the internal thread and the external thread, are fantastic. So, sublime screw down crown execution, silky smooth, feels good to manually wind, feels good to set the time, screws down and unscrews to a very satisfactory standard, and the proportions of the knurled crown are very good. It's grippy and tactile but doesn't feel sharp, so you can get good purchase with your index finger and thumb. I like the proportions. It's slightly recessed in the crown guard, so it does look good and also feels good. Right, so let's look at the FKM fluoro rubber strap in detail. Now, FKM fluoro rubber, it's durable. It's more durable and robust than silicone rubber, which is softer. Really, it's a compromise between nitrile butadiene rubber or natural rubber and also silicone rubber. It's in between the two in terms of how supple it is. For example, it feels more soft and supple than natural rubber, but it feels stiffer than silicone rubber. Now, the benefit of using FKM fluoro rubber is it is durable and robust. Often silicone rubber straps, especially when they have a slot for quick release spring bars like this, they have a tendency to split and crack around the spring bar with regular use. FKM is more durable, it's stiffer and more hard and therefore more robust. The thing I like about this one is it's vented, as you can see. Has vents going all the way through it. The benefit of the vents is it allows for air circulation. It allows for sweat and perspiration and seawater, if you use this piece for diving, to wick away from the wrist, so it dries out quickly. Also, it's got a recess underneath it, so it allows air circulation. Plenty of holes in it, so this will fit from a 6 to an 8-inch wrist with no difficulties whatsoever. So, it feels stiffer than silicone rubber, and it feels more soft and supple than nitrile butadiene rubber, or alternatively natural rubber. It's a compromise between the two. Very well finished because the end of it has the Peacock emblem embossed, as you can see, and on the underside, good attention to detail because we have the Peacock logo. And I'm pleased to see quick release stainless steel spring bars used rather than standard spring bars, because that negates the need for a spring bar tool if you want to exchange the strap. On the other side, it's also signed with Peacock, as you can see. It's nice and smooth on the underside, so it feels very smooth and comfortable to wear for long periods of time. Now, good attention to detail. We have two keepers. One slides, one's fixed. One of the keepers is signed with Peacock. So this one slides up and down, but this one engages with teeth, as you can see. So there are a pair of teeth on the left and the right hand flank, and this actually works very well because the first keeper engages with a nice click. It sits in between the teeth and it prevents it sliding out of position from the buckle and tang, and it works very well. I like it. It's a good design. The keepers are correctly proportioned, and it's good to have two. One that's fixed and one that slides. So, nice and flexible, robust. FKM fluoro rubber is high quality, and I'm pleased I didn't use the cost-cutting measure of silicone rubber, for example. So, let's look at the exhibition caseback. The exhibition caseback is glazed with sapphire crystal. Now, no cost-cutting measure here. Often Chinese mid-tier brands will use mineral crystal for the exhibition caseback because, strictly speaking, the front of the piece needs to have sapphire crystal glazing because that's an area that's prone to being scuffed and scratched with daily wear and tear. But the exhibition caseback isn't prone to being scuffed and scratched, and therefore often mineral crystal is used. It does suffice. But Peacock deserve credit. They've used sapphire crystal in the front and sapphire crystal in the back. The exhibition caseback does an excellent job of displaying the caliber SL5811 Tourbillon. Beautiful milled stripes on the bridge, as you can see, and it does look like Côtes du Genève, and I think it's very well finished with blued screws. Also, the gears are very well finished with radial satin finishing. So it's a very well decorated movement. Now, the thing I really like about it is if you look at the Tourbillon, you can see the main plate of the movement actually is skeletonized. You can see all the way through from the front to the back, or from the back to the front. As you can see, you can look straight through the Tourbillon, straight through it. And it's absolutely gorgeous because when you take the watch off wrist and you look at the movement through the exhibition caseback, you can actually see daylight through the centre of the Tourbillon. Fantastic finishing. The milled stripes are high definition They're nice and sharp. They really do look like Coats de Genève. The quality of the finishing to the gearing is sharp and crisp. Beautiful radial brushed satin finishing, and the blued screws are also very nicely decorated. So it's a manual wind movement versus an automatic, so we don't have a rotor. Now, the negative is you can't wear this for 8 to 12 hours per day to automatically wind it. That's the negative of it being manual wind rather than automatic. But the positive benefit of this being a manual wind tourbillon versus an automatic is it's very thin. So although this is 300 meters, this piece, even with an exhibition case back, it is only 11.3 millimeters. Now, I want you to think about that, because often tourbillon movements, and bear in mind this does have a high power reserve of 48 hours, when you have a thick mainspring and a tourbillon movement, often they're very thick. So in order to house it inside a case, the watch needs to be 13 millimeters plus, and therefore they feel very top heavy and thick, like a slab of 316L grade stainless steel sitting on top of the wrist. But this doesn't, because it's only 11.3, even though it has an exhibition case back. And we're not looking at 200 meters here. This is 300 meters, and therefore the sapphire crystal in the exhibition case back and in the front of the piece need to be 2 millimeters thick to provide 300 meters of hermetic seal. So if it were 11.3 and only 200 meters, I wouldn't be impressed by that, because that's nothing special for a manual wind movement. But this is only 11.3 and it's 300 meters with sapphire crystal in the front and the back. So it's very good. It's low profile. Now, the benefit of it is, look how flat and low profile it is. It's not a bubble back case back. If this had a rotor, it would need adequate clearance between the rotor and the sapphire crystal in the exhibition caseback. So they would have to use a bubble back caseback. That would add an additional 1.5 to 2 millimeters of thickness, and therefore it would be over 13 millimeters thick. This is only 11.3 because look how flat it is. Now, the benefit of this is the comfort level, the feel-good factor, because it has this large glazing in it. It feels perfectly flat against the wrist, very smooth, and it's very comfortable to wear. The stainless steel portion is brushed satin finish with concentric CNC lathe tool machining. The holes drilled in it are deburred and chamfered very well, so no sharp edges. The engraving is high definition and sharp. Feels nice and smooth. Flat case back. Does a good job of displaying the movement, which is decorated with the milled stripes and also the blued screws. It's a very good looking tourbillon caliber. So quality of the finishing to the case back is excellent. Quality of the head of the piece is excellent. Quality of the bezel is excellent. And as I've detailed, this watch isn't made from 316L grade, it's entirely made from 904L. Right, so I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. So 22 to 18 is the correct taper, and I'm pleased to report this is an unexpected, pleasant surprise. Often with FKM rubber strap pieces, the strap is a fraction too short, but as you can see, I can easily engage the end of the FKM floral rubber strap in both of the keepers, the fixed keeper and the sliding keeper. So this will fit from a 6-inch minimum up to an 8-inch maximum. I can actually slide an index finger beneath the buckle and tang and strap, so this would actually fit even an 8.5-inch wrist. It's actually loose on my 8-inch wrist and there's still length on it. So they deserve credit because it's clearly intended for collectors with a larger wrist size, because it is a large piece, 44.5. In terms of how it looks and feels, visually it does remind me of a Blancpain 50 Fathoms because it has that large wrist presence of 44.5. The other thing to be aware of, it does have a long lug-to-lug measurement of 50.2. So straight away I would say if you're a collector with a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches, this is going to be too large. It doesn't feel too heavy, it does lack heft, it's only 116 grams, which is very light for a 44.5, but it's a long case. So if you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist, you're going to find the 50.2 lug to lug too long for comfort because the tips of the lugs are going to overhang your wrist. But if you have a larger wrist of 7 to 8 inches plus, you will enjoy the wrist presence. The thing about it is, it doesn't feel heavy, it doesn't feel top heavy, it feels balanced. They've made the correct decision by using a 22 to 20 taper on the FKM rubber strap because it distributes the weight of the head of the piece around the wrist. Had they used a 20 to 16, which is the industry standard, the strap would look too undersized and also it wouldn't distribute the weight. So long piece, wide piece, but low profile. You'll know from my previous reviews, 13mm is the sweet spot to easily slip underneath a shirt cuff if you wear business shirts. So needless to say, at only 11.3 it's well below the 13mm sweet spot. This is very flat and low profile. Just look how snug it fits to my wrist. There's a minimal gap beneath the tips of the angular lugs, and the case back is perfectly flat due to the large sapphire crystal. So minimal gap beneath the undercuts to the flanks. The lugs angle down around the wrist, so there's a minimal gap beneath the tips of the lugs. So it doesn't sit on top of the wrist like a slab of 316L grade stainless steel. It curves and wraps around the wrist, but you clearly need to have a larger wrist of 7 to 8 inches. Otherwise, it's going to feel like it dominates the wrist too much. Comfort level is fantastic. Feel good factor is fantastic. The FKM rubber strap feels very smooth and very comfortable. Looks good with the vents in it, and also the buckle and tang is large. Plenty of gauge to it, so it looks very aggressive, and also like the proportions of the two keepers. So the buckle and tang and the strap look large enough. They have enough meat to balance the head of the piece, which obviously is large at 44.5. In terms of legibility, the skeletonized mirror polished sword hands contrast very well with a gradient dial, and I like the electric blue graduating to navy blue at the circumference or chaptering, and it contrasts very well with a black domed profile to the sapphire bezel insert. As you can see, tourbillon adds interest to it at 6 o'clock, and the legibility of the tourbillon is very good because the silver pointer to the tourbillon registers very well with the black second ticks on the silver subdial effectively at 6 o'clock, so you can clearly see the seconds, and the tourbillon is absolutely gorgeous to look at. So it's a good looking piece. Feel good factor is good, comfort level is good, but it is large. It does wear with wrist presence. The main thing to note is the long 50.2. Had they reduced this to 48, which is the sweet spot for lug to lug, it would fit collectors with a 6 to 7 inch wrist and also a 7 to 8 inch wrist. I'd also like to see Peacock offer this in a 40mm version, because that would suit collectors with a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches. At 44.5, it really is only suitable for larger 7 to 8 inch wrists. But I like the wrist presence. I like the lack of heft. At 116 grams, anything below 150 grams is comfortable to wear for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day. So at 116, it really does feel weightless on wrist. Doesn't feel top heavy, curves around the wrist well, very well balanced on the FKM rubber strap. The only thing I would like to change is I think this would look aesthetically pleasing on a navy blue FKM rubber strap versus black. The black does go with the black sapphire bezel inserts, but a navy blue FKM rubber strap would go with a graduated dial, because it graduates from electric blue to navy blue at the chaptering, and I think a navy blue strap would look better, but this is subjective. I just would like to see Peacock offer this with alternative coloured straps to match the dial colours, because this piece is available in 4 dial colour options: blue, brown, green and black respectively. Of the 4 colour options, I think this blue one is the best looking. So good looking piece, comfort level is good, feels balanced, but only suitable for larger wrists of 7 to 8 inches plus. Right, so just bear with me, I'll do up the strap again, and then we'll do a lume test and see how it performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. So this piece uses C3 Super Lume Nova throughout, on the fully lumed sapphire bezel insert on the bezel, the dial and also the handset. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, initially it looks good on the dial and handset, but however, it's disappointing on the sapphire bezel insert. The domed sapphire bezel insert is fully lumed with C3 Super Lume Nova, but immediately the triangle at 12 o'clock, the 15-minute ticks in the first quarter, and the Arabic numerals 15, 30 and 45 respectively are fading immediately to nothing. So this is disappointing at this price point in the mid-tier, because one expects to see 5 to 6 layers on the sapphire bezel insert if it's fully lumed, 5 to 6 layers on the indices, 5 to 6 layers on the skeletonized sword hands. There's also a slight colour tone mismatch between the indices and the skeletonized sword hands. Now, this isn't down to a different grade of C3 being used. I think what they've done here is they've used the same C3 on the bezel insert, the indices and the handset, but the reason why we've got a colour tone mismatch, the hands look a brighter green, is because they've applied more layers of C3 to the handset versus less layers on the indices, and you can see the exciter is appearing to glow brighter green on the skeletonized hands than the applied indices, which seem to glow in a darker green tone. The green tone on the bezel, which is now fading to nothing, is also the same colour as the dial. So I think what they've done is they've applied, for example, 2 to 3 layers on the bezel and the indices, and then 3 to 4 layers on the hands, and that's why you've got a brighter green tone on the hands. It's just more layers, more application. So disappointing. They really need to apply 5 to 6 layers on the sapphire bezel inserts, 5 to 6 layers on the indices, 5 to 6 layers on the skeletonized sword hands to give a perfect colour tone match and the exciter brighter performance, because this is now disappointing. One can be magnanimous about 2 to 3 layers as a production cost cutting measure on low tier Chinese pieces below €100, but when you get to the mid tier price point of over €2,000, it has to be stellar performance. There are no excuses. You cannot have the cost cutting measure. It needs to have 5 to 6 layers in all 3 places and a perfect colour tone match, because as you can see, the negative now is it's now fading quickly to nothing, and this is disappointing at this price point. It is the main negative I want you to be aware of with regards to this piece. So room for improvement. Excuse me. Right, so let's discuss the movement use, because it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. So as I've detailed, Peacock have a rich brand heritage, founded in 1957. So they are well respected for making high quality movements, including tourbillon movements such as this Peacock Caliber SL5811 tourbillon. So it has 24 joules, it runs at 28,800 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 4 Hz. Hand winding, but the negative is no hacking. So as I've demonstrated in the time setting test, you cannot hack the movement and set the time precisely to the second, which is a disappointing aspect, because often collectors like to set the time either with a second hand or also a tourbillon precisely to the second. On a positive note, it does have a long power reserve of 48 hours, which is very good. It only takes 40 clockwise turns to fully manually wind it, and therefore you can manually wind it every 2 days and it will continuously run. The benefit of this being a free-spun tourbillon is it is more shock resistant. So it's a shock resistant tourbillon caliber, which is good. This one is running consistently at plus 2 seconds per day when it's fully wound to its maximum 48 hours. So it's very good. Long power reserve. Usually with tourbillon movements, when they extend the power reserve from 40 to 48, for example, they sacrifice accuracy. If they reduce the power reserve, they increase the accuracy. They can refine it. So one has to strike a balance. Now, they've made the correct choice here, because this doesn't run at 21,600 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 3 Hz, which sometimes tourbillon movements do. They've selected the correct choice. They've chosen 28,800 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 4 Hz. That's the perfect balance between power reserve and accuracy. So they've been able to have a long power reserve of 48 hours versus 40, but they've still retained the accuracy. Plus 2 is chronometer grade accurate, but 48 is still very long power reserve. So it's a good balance. Now, one could say the negative is the lack of a rotor, because it's not an automatic, and therefore one has to manually wind it every 2 days. You cannot wear this piece for 8 to 12 hours per day to automatically wind it. But the positive outweighs the negative, because this is a very thin tourbillon movement with a very long power reserve of 48 hours. Because it doesn't have a rotor, as I've detailed, they've reduced the thickness of this piece down to 11.3. And although it's large, it's very low profile. So, low profile movement, low profile head of the piece, comfort level and feel good factor are therefore accentuated. So, it's accurate at plus 2, 48 hours has long power reserve, and I think it's good. 2 days of manual winding is okay. 48 hours of power reserve is strong enough, and I don't think it's negative to unscrew the crown and manually wind it 40 clockwise turns every 48 hours or 2 days. It's okay. Just the lack of hacking is the main negative to be aware of. In terms of reliability, it's good. In terms of build quality, quality control, materials and finishing, it's excellent. As you can see, milled stripes are finished to perfection, blued screws, the gears are nicely polished and radial brushed satin finished, and the movement is decorated to a high standard. So the build quality is excellent. Peacock are very well respected for making high quality tourbillon movements. Yes, it is possible to buy low tier and mid tier Chinese tourbillon watches at lower price points, but the quality, build quality, quality control, finishing and materials are lower grade than Peacock tourbillon movements. This is a high quality tourbillon. So last I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch meets 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price points. So mid-tier piece, the price point is $2,519 US, which is €2,339. I'm going to declare it good quality, and I'm going to declare it OK value. Now, unfortunately, I can't say excellent quality and excellent value because of the negatives. The main negative of the movement is the lack of hacking, but that's subjective. For the majority of collectors, that isn't going to be detrimental. However, the one main negative of this piece, which one cannot overlook and one cannot be magnanimous about, at the €2,339 price point, is the Lume performance. It is a major negative. Peacock really need to address this because, as I've said, one can be magnanimous below €100 in the low tier with cost-cutting measures like 2 to 3 layers or 3 to 4 layers of C3. Not in the mid-tier, €2,339. It is wholly unacceptable. If you're going to use a fully Lume sapphire bezel insert, it has to have 5 to 6 layers of C3. That is the industry standard. Same applies to the indices, same applies to the skeletonized sword hands. 5 to 6 on the bezel, 5 to 6 on the dial, 5 to 6 on the hands. It's optimum. The exciter must glow brightly at €2,339. You cannot cut production costs in that area. So it's disappointing because the other aspects of the specification are strong. Because, for example, they've used 904L, which is used by Rolex in their Oyster steel, versus the cost-cutting measure of 316L grade. They've also used FKM fluoro rubber for the strap versus the less expensive option of silicon rubber. So it's a shame because there are no cost-cutting measures in other areas. They could have used mineral crystal in the case back. It's sapphire crystal. Now, lastly, let's just check the bezel execution. 120 click unidirectional bezel, as one would expect. No lateral side-to-side play, no back play. Let's check the alignment. One more click. Perfect. Feels even all the way through the 360 degrees of rotation. So, perfect bezel execution. Sublime screw-down crown execution, it's silky smooth. So really, the only negative to this piece is the superluminova. It needs 5 to 6 layers. Easy for Peacock to update this with a V2 and correct it. Then I would upgrade it to being excellent quality and excellent value. But as it stands, that's the negative. So I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Peacock Ocean Wing Tourbillon. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.